Hi everybody and welcome to Module 3. I wanted to share with you guys some thoughts before we jump into this week's module. And I want to start just by acknowledging the fantastic active participation that I've been seeing on the discussion forums and also your engagement with each other through commenting on our Google slide decks. It's all been really fantastic and I appreciate how active and thoughtful everyone has been, and I look forward to continuing to learn alongside you guys and with you guys throughout these next coming modules. So thus far we have explored some history of special ed. We've looked at some historical milestones. We've talked about the power of our language and how the language we use really impacts perspectives and thinking both among our colleagues and peer-to-peer in the classroom. There have been some great conversations on that topic. We've also looked at an overview of learning differences and how the presence of a learning difference really impacts the student experience throughout the school day. We watched some videos to that effect, and you guys had some really fantastic takeaways on your note to myself slide deck regarding the different learnings that you're going to be bringing into the classroom and what you want to keep in mind with respect to how you're interacting with students, in particular thinking about things like anxiety, things like processing and processing delays and challenges. So a really nice overview to how some students with learning differences experience school and some really fantastic reflections on all of your parts. So thank you so much for that. This week we are going to be diving into the IEP process. We're going to be looking at the format of an IEP meeting. Some of you have already experienced this in the past, and for some of you it's going to be brand new. Regardless, if you have some background information already, I'm hoping that you can use the opportunity to go deeper. The different resources we're going to be accessing will definitely allow for different levels of depth with respect to the content that you're learning. So this should be nicely differentiated for folks this week. I wanted to say a couple of things. First is that the forms we're going to be looking at, the IEP forms in particular that we're going to be learning about this week, are from the Desert Mountain SELPA. The majority of you are at Haitakai Charter Schools, which is a member district of Desert Mountain. However, not all of you are with Haitakai, and those of you who are not are going to be using different IEP forms than the ones that are linked in this module. So I believe the majority of you who are not with Haitakai are member districts of El Dorado Charter SELPA. So when it comes to that point in the module, instead of looking at the Desert Mountain SELPA forms, you can look at your own SELPA's forms instead. So spend that 45 minutes looking at your own SELPA's forms instead of Desert Mountain. The rest of the stuff that you're going to be looking at from the Desert Mountain SELPA website is totally applicable and relevant to universally to anyone's practice. So the only exception is that 45-minute block when you're looking at forms in particular. The second thing that I wanted to say is a couple of thoughts about eligibility criteria. This week we're going to be diving into the 13 different ways that a student can qualify for special education. And this is, again, some really foundational knowledge and understanding that will serve you in your practice. I wanted to share with you another thing that I wish someone had shared with me when I first started teaching, which is there's a really common misconception that just because you have a learning disability or a learning difference, you're automatically eligible for special ed. So for example, if a student has a diagnosis of autism, it's commonly perceived that that student should be in special ed. And the reality is that in most of the language in the law and the IDEA that outlines how a student is found eligible, there's language about an adverse impact on educational performance, which means that the presence of a learning difference or a disability in and of itself does not automatically qualify you for special education. Instead, the majority of the language in the law talks about adverse impact, meaning that if a student has autism, that autism needs to be negatively impacting that student's academic performance, perhaps their social emotional learning and engagement with peers, their ability to collaborate in groups, to initiate and maintain friendships. All of those different pieces are connected connected within educational performance. So it's a fallacy to think that the presence of a learning difference or an exceptionality of some kind automatically qualifies you. The majority of the handicapping conditions have language about adverse impact, and you're going to be reading that language as part of your learning this week. The last thing that I wanted to share with you guys is that we are not going to be having a discussion forum this week. Instead, I wanted to invite you to a Google Hangout office hours experience this coming Friday at 10 a.m. This is an opportunity for us to reflect in a group for whoever can join about our learning in the first 3 modules. It's not mandatory. I know that some of you are traveling and not able to make it, but for those of you who are around and available at 10 a.m. on Friday, I would love to see you on Google Hangout. And I will be sending a Google Hangout link to your email shortly. All right, guys, happy Module 3, and I'll see you soon.